Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episodes 7 and 8, the penultimate episode and the season/series finale of Apple TV's Lessons in Chemistry. You know, I was actually in the process of preparing my notes for a video for episode 7 when I realized that the finale had actually been posted up early. So Apple, you know, for Friday shows, generally Apple has it up like Thursday at 9 and you can catch it then. But the finale was up Wednesday at 9. So that actually worked out for me because the main point of my episode 7 video was going to be how I was kind of unsure if it was wise of the show to spend the entire penultimate episode on this Calvin backstory that only seemed to serve the purpose of getting the letters that were written between Reverend Wakely and Calvin in Mad's hands. And I didn't even necessarily mind that being the focus of the episode. It was just like, wow, it's a lot of attention to devote to furthering a plot line that's kind of felt like an afterthought all season. But I was willing to kind of withhold judgment because when you have a centrally focused penultimate episode like that, a lot of weight falls onto the finale because not only does it have to wrap up everything else, but we haven't even watched everything else in 2 weeks because of the penultimate episode having the central focus. So I was going to give my thoughts, but ultimately kind of land in a place of whether or not this works relies on the finale. So with the finale dropping before I'd even recorded the video, I was like, well, fuck it. I'll just watch the finale now, see if it works, and then do one video talking about episodes 7 and 8. So here we are. And ultimately, I think it did work. While I did have some issues with the finale and the show as a whole, I think it largely did do a good job of wrapping up the season and explaining the importance of the Calvin-focused penultimate episode. It's just that I also think that because everything technically came together and made sense, that doesn't make this a show that was worth my time. Like, everything making sense and coming together, that's the bare fucking minimum. That is an expectation of every show that I watch. Right above that is, was this an enjoyable watch? And I don't think the show necessarily passes that test. I didn't dislike it or anything like that. I don't think it was a bad show. But I didn't look forward to it every week. On the contrary, by week 7, it was an afterthought. Episode 7, you know, it was like a job that I had to punch in for every week. And I don't think this show did anything particularly special or interesting to justify its 8 hours of existence. And what it was meaning to do during that time, I don't think it did particularly well. You know, there's a big women can do whatever they put their mind to theme in this show. You know, you see it with Elizabeth overcoming misogyny all the time and the loss of Calvin to host this show. And you see it with Harriet and the freeway situation. The problem is that the misogyny stuff was really, really heavy-handed. It was true to the time period, but we just got hit over the head with it so frequently, and a lot of the misogynistic moments were really basic and unimaginative examples. They even undermine themselves sometimes. Like in that one scene where the assistant offered Elizabeth coffee and she responded by saying, "How do you take it?" Like, I was sitting there like, that's not even true to Elizabeth's character to respond that way. But I guess we just needed another example of how women were treated back then. And while I said, you see the women can do whatever they put their mind to theme in the Harriet plotline, I felt like they even kind of bungled that too by having her ultimately lose the vote and not even attempt to give an explanation on why the one swing vote guy flipped. Now, yes, I can put two and two together and assume why, but that felt like a really empty ending to the Freeway story, and I'd be willing to wager it's probably done better in the book. Now, I want to talk about the main arc that plays out over these final 2 episodes, which is the Calvin backstory and how it ties into present day, which I actually thought they did a pretty good job of. To this point, the stuff with Mad searching for info on Calvin, it just kind of felt pointless. Now, I wish its importance, or at least that it would be important later, was clearer and more evident prior to the final episode. But I do think how it all came together was pretty satisfying, so let's get into that. In episode 7, we learn about Calvin's childhood. We see that he's in a boys' home, orphanage, foster care, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that's doubling as a prohibition bootlegging operation. And he's using his scientific knowledge to make alcohol, not unlike what Liz does on her show decades later, using her scientific knowledge to make food. A guy from the Remsen Institute shows up at this orphanage. I'm going to call it an orphanage. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what I'm going to call it. Looking for Calvin. And for all of my episode 7 notes, I called this guy Remsen because I assumed that was his name and that the Remsen Institute was named after him. But that's just the chauvinist pig that I am, you guys. But Calvin suspects the guy's there for him, but the priest in charge tells Calvin that the guy didn't want him and then tells the guy that Calvin died of tuberculosis. We jump to Calvin's adulthood, and now he's hot shit at Hastings. A young Reverend Wakely comes to see him speak, and this sparks a ferocious debate over science versus religion between what becomes these two pen pals. There's some good moments in these exchanges, including a moment where Wakely says science is the how and religion is the why. I thought that was fairly profound. But then later, he opens up about a crisis of faith that he had. You know, he says that he was mad at God for giving his dad cancer when his dad had been following all of God's rules. Like, he was living the right life, and you gave him cancer anyway, you piece of shit. And then on top of that, the dad was initially refusing treatment, presumably because his plan was to pray and let go and let God, which is, I mean... if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say anything at all, and that's why no sound came out of my mouth. But then he says, though, that he thinks their friendship is proof of the divine, and I thought that was pretty profound too. So lots of great scenes coming out of these, great moments, I think, coming out of these back and forth between Calvin and Reverend Wakely. As we enter the time period in which Calvin and Elizabeth meet, the dad has begun treatment, and Calvin is now writing Wakely about Elizabeth. We also learned that Calvin is getting letters from people pretending to be his family. He snaps on someone over this, and we learned that his parents abandoned him as a child. So that's why people pretending to be them is a sore spot for him. So he has Harriet's law firm draw up a cease and desist letter for this Avery person whose name was on the letter that we saw at the end of episode 6. Then in the finale, we learned that Avery is Calvin's actual birth mother. She tells Liz and Mad the story of what happened to her, including getting access to her trust fund at the age of 25 and starting the Remsen Foundation. The guy that I've been calling Remsen in my notes for all of episode 7, his name was actually Wilson, and he had been hired by Avery to find Calvin. It wasn't until Calvin was on the cover of a magazine that they learned he was alive, and that's when the letter started, and everything from that point on was really just a big misunderstanding. So by the end of the episode, Liz has formed something that resembles a family. She has Mad and her newly discovered mother-in-law, Avery. She has Harriet and Harriet's family. And she has Fran and Walter, who are now dating. It's just one big happy family. But let's wrap up by talking about the other plot lines that were wrapped up in the finale as well. I don't like how I said wrap up twice in that sentence there. I want to start with the Freeway plot line because I found that to be really, really underwhelming. You know, it was treated like an afterthought in the finale, but they had built it up so much throughout the season. I was really interested to see how that was going to pan out. You know, it was the opposite of the Mad plot line, which wasn't built up at all, but then was like monumentally important in the finale. So when we first see Harriet in the finale, she receives a call saying one of the 2 swing votes that she needed to stop the freeway being built had flipped to her side and was going to vote her way. And even then, I was kind of like, that's it? Like, that's it? Like, I don't know. That felt like not a lot. But then we come back to, we don't come back to it, I'm sorry, until the end of the episode. And at some point in the episode, I wrote in my notes, I guess that freeway plot line was way less important than I thought it was. Because I thought that was going to be it. Like, oh, I got the last vote. Great. But as if that wasn't bad enough, they do return to the freeway story, which of course was good for me for a moment. But then they made the way the vote was going to play out super fucking obvious by having the swing vote guy inexplicably and conveniently show up late as fuck to the thing. And I'm just like, well, now I know where this is going. The late swing vote guy is going to change his vote. And of course, that's what happens. And we don't ever find out why he changed his vote or why he said he'd vote Harriet's way in the first place. And I don't know. I felt that was just such an underwhelming end to the freeway story arc, which I was really invested in. As far as Supper at 6 goes, Phil tells Liz that they lost the shortening sponsor and that she has 2 weeks to find another one or she's going to be fired. And in a weird scene, she explains menstruation on a cooking show as a way to introduce Tampax as the new sponsor. She then quits the show, and the network head fires Phil and then puts Walter in charge. And speaking of Walter, I thought that actor did a really good job in this role. You know, I loved him in the comedic role that he plays on Big Bang Theory. He's outstanding on that show, really slept on. But he was a real standout here as well. I thought he was great. That guy's really charming, very likable. And he does good with like heartwarming stuff. So really good job by that actor. He ends up in a relationship with Fran in the final heavy-handed gender roles commentary scene of the series. Fran asks him out, and I'm like, all right, cool. Fuck gender roles. I feel you. You know, women can ask a man out, no big deal. Then she's like, I'll pick you up at 7. I'm just like, all right, yeah, like you guys couldn't just leave it alone. Like you had a good moment to spit in the face of gender roles, and then you're just like, yeah, I'll pick you up at 7. It's like, okay, that was too much. Like, we get it, but it's like you didn't have to like really fucking do it right there with the I'll pick you up at 7 like that. I don't know. I don't even know if that was the time, but whatever. One last thing though, I felt they dropped the ball on having what could have been a really cute scene / moment to end the show. When Matt and Liz first meet Avery and they're telling her about Calvin, they mentioned that he was a silly dancer, and Avery's like, oh, I'm a silly dancer too. And then at the end of the episode, when they're doing this like holiday family montage, they should have shown Avery dancing like Calvin did. Like, that would have been a perfect note to end on. But say la vie. Say la vie. We got what we got. But, you know, all in all, the show was passable. Fine. Whatever. I don't think that's much of a compliment, but whatever. Nothing to really call home about. But, you know, it didn't suck. And if you're somebody who feels like you need to see... maybe not even need to see, but want to maybe even give someone else the opportunity to see something where, you know, with strong women in it, here you go. But I mean, there's so many things that do it better and with a lot more grace and a lot less heavy-handed. But finale episode I thought was really strong, probably the strongest of the entire series, so that's good. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. Nothing special. But I don't know, if you guys think I'm a piece of shit and you thought the show was great, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Peace.